Have water.
Oh, you can stand over there?
Yeah, why not?
Well, I don't know. Why not? Why not?
Where would you like me to stand?
I don't really care. Stand where you want.
Well, it's great to be here. We like Debbie, and I was gonna say,
Oh, good.
after Debbie Downer, wah wah wah. Now we're gonna take over. We have to lift you back up again somehow. Why'd you take my?
Why did you hand them to me?
Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to make a joke, and I can only do one thing at a time. It's called executive
I
functioning
have my own
skills.
papers doubled on too. That's us.
Yep.
Connect Autism.
We're going to talk a little bit about our story. Debbie gave us a really good introduction, and we'd like to talk a little bit about ourselves and raising our kids and some of the struggles we've gone through, and a little bit about each one of us and how we blend together and made a family, and how we're attempting to be successful every day, right, Julie?
Now there's a good, attempting to be successful. Well, we talk about autism from a unique perspective, so we don't talk about it from a clinical perspective, but from the perspective of someone who has autism. We're kind of like the Addams family a little bit. See the resemblance? There we are.
Oh my goodness. So who, my Uncle Fester? Or
I'm not sure.
Lurch?
Lurch, there you go.
Lurch, I'm Lurch. Do I start?
Yeah, you start. See, your name is right there.
All right. You might be wondering who we are and why this issue means so much to us. Jodi and myself have been married for 21 years. My first and only wife. I have to say that because marriage is a struggle these days, so we've been blessed to make it that many years. And we have 2 children. Caleb is 18, Miriam's 13. And all of us in our family, every one of us have autism, diagnosed with autism at different times. Our lives individually as a family are just full of stories about our life with autism. Some humorous and some not quite so funny. And many adventure struggles, victories and disappointments, laughters and tears. We could write a book.
Oh yeah, we are writing a book.
So we're in the process of finishing up our ebook, which is going to be on Amazon, A Unique Perspective of Autism. So you can be looking for that. ConnectAutism.org is the name of our organization, our nonprofit. So you can check that out. Connect Autism. We're trying to make connections in the brain again, because autism is all about the disconnects between the brain, the 2 sides of the brain.
It's also about connecting people with autism with other people with autism, as well as connecting people that are neurotypical with people with autism. So making connections. It's all about connections.
Many people ask us what unique challenges we face as a family of Aspies and what we do to meet those challenges. We'd love the opportunity to share a little bit about this with you in our story. So what unique challenges do we face as a whole family with autism?
And how do we work together to meet those challenges on a daily basis?
How does autism affect us?
What are our limitations?
And what are coping strategies? Because we've developed many coping strategies, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about those and how we function as adults and how we have come to figure out how to pretend to be neurotypical.
And that's the word, pretend. Because the reality is we're not going to be neurotypical, but we can kind of try to fake it, and fake it till you make it, they say. Well, you just play the game sometimes. I'm going to talk about my story. This is my mom right here. She raised me, a single mom for many years until she got married to my stepdad, who was pretty much not that much involved in my life. So she still was pretty much a single mom. So it was just me and her for most of for pretty much all my life growing up. So she's a pretty special lady. She's 81 now. She's going to be 82. She's doing well. Man, you can't tell. She can kick them like nobody's business. So.
Kind of like Rita.
Yeah, kind of like Rita back there.
Oh, did we say that? How old she is? Sorry.
I didn't say how old she was.
47.
That's right. But I grew up an only child on a farm in rural North Dakota, 10 miles from the closest small, don't blink, you'll miss it town. Being an only child and a girl living on a farm far away from civilization has its own challenges. And the fact that I had undiagnosed autism spectrum disorder becomes even more interesting and challenging. School was a challenge not because of the academics of it. I liked school and was a pretty good student. However, the social aspect was an anomaly. Although then I didn't comprehend that I had problems socially, which, believe me, I was totally unaware. You know, it's funny, looking back now, I can see some of those things from my adult perspective that I just had absolutely no clue what was going on back
And you thought
then.
you did.
I thought, man, I couldn't figure out why nobody, liked it when I was bossing everybody around. I didn't understand that. Why not? This makes total sense.
Did you monologue all the time then too?
Maybe.
That's a big family issue with us. Everybody likes to monologue.
Although then I didn't quite comprehend that I had problems socially. There were just so many times that I couldn't quite figure out what was going on and why people were reacting the way they were. Many times I felt like a spectator, not really feeling involved in my own life. Kind of like being in a fishbowl, I felt like I was watching everything happen, and I just didn't feel like I was participating in it, even though I was there and I was even talking, I was, doing stuff. It just sometimes didn't feel real. It kind of felt dream world-like. In elementary school, my teacher said I was a daydreamer. I had potential, but I needed to apply myself. I think now that I was just overwhelmed and retreating into my own world to get away from whatever it was that was overwhelming and overloading. I remember times when the teacher or someone was getting after me for something. I didn't understand what I had done and would just kind of blur them out. Anybody ever done that? You just kind of blur your eyes, and, just to kind of, and that would be my way of, kind of pretending I was listening and focusing on them, but I wasn't. I was uncomfortable with the eye contact, and so I was looking like I was listening, but I wasn't. I would just block them out. This was most likely misunderstood as aloofness, but then I didn't really understand that. So, I also remember as a child that I liked to spin a lot. Now again, what do we all recognize that as? Stimming. How did I didn't know what that was called. I just know that it made me feel like I was centered in my world. And so I would spin and I would feel like I was,
Ballerina?
I can't do that anymore. But of course, we all know that there's all different kinds of stimming, and some rock, some spin, some do other tapping. We had a foster son one time that he would do this when he was really excited. He'd just start going like this, and we didn't even at that time we didn't necessarily recognize it as autism. But now, again, looking back, it's like, oh, some of these things click. Much of my time is spent thinking, planning, and processing, so that I'm not surprised throughout my day. So I know what to expect, how to be prepared for situations. A lot of times I'll in my head, I'll what do you call it? I can't think of the word. Pre-act it up. Role play, there you go, thank you. I'll role play in my head. Okay, if this situation happens and they say this, then I'll say that. Then if this person says that, then I say, but if they say this, then I'll say that. So I'm prepared for the conversation. So so I go in and I'm not nervous or frustrated or wondering what's going to happen. So another thing that I have, a lot of things have rituals, and if I don't do everything in that order, I'll forget where I was at. If something or someone interrupts that process,
Don't interrupt.
then I go, okay, what was I doing? Which part was I on?
Start over again, not an hour.
And it happens in conversations too. If like my husband interrupts me, which he does, or my daughter, she's very good at that too. My son's he doesn't interrupt as much, but those two they just get a thought and it bursts and they start talking. Well, if they do that and I have to start, wait for them to finish, then when I start over, I have to start over because I need to go with the flow. So it's very hard to not, just keep up, take off from where you left off. I can't do that because I have to get back into the flow of what I was saying. So it's very hard to do that. Constantly processing steps to every situation throughout the day, projecting what I think may happen. I think I said that. I know that many people say everyone struggles with this, which might be true, but it's different for someone who's on the spectrum, because even though you might have routines and things that you do in a certain way, do you really feel like you're going to have a meltdown if you have to reprocess, or if it gets interrupted? That's the way someone with autism feels a lot of times. You feel like you're just going to melt down. And now, as you grow up, you don't necessarily have those physical fall to the ground meltdowns. But that's how you feel. You feel like you want to. You just have learned how to cope, and you've learned how not to make the public display.
It's not socially acceptable to have a meltdown in
It
public.
is not. Really?
No, it's not.
Okay. Okay. Now here's the other thing. This is funny because I see this all the time. When you're having a conversation with someone and then all of a sudden you forget kind of what you were talking about, or you just kind of lose the flow of what you were saying. Well, usually you can kind of just stop and pick it back up. Well, someone with autism starts to feel real awkward. And when you start to feel real awkward, rather than stand there and we feel like, this is my feeling, I feel stupid, so rather than just stand there and feel stupid, I'll walk away. And it will look rude to most neurotypical people. Well, why are they just walking away? Why did you just walk away from me? It's not being rude. They just suddenly just was like, well, what's the point of standing here staring at somebody when I can't remember what I was saying, so let's just walk away. It's not being rude. It's just a way to just, cope. That's true. So to this day, I still struggle with different things. But what I do at the beginning of my day is I process what may happen, or what are the things that are going on for the day, so that I can be prepared. And at the end of the day, I write and I journal in order to process what happened, so I can process it out and go to sleep. If I don't have those things that I do in the morning to prepare, then I feel frazzled all day long. If I don't process through what happened in the evening, I won't be able to go to sleep because I'll still have it mulling around in my head. So that helps me to be able to process my day, and so that I can, be at peace, I guess, is a good word for it. So in those times when I feel overloaded, and our kitchen table is a big one, everybody starts talking at once. So at those times, what I do is I'll go to I'll say, okay, overloaded, see ya, and I'll go to my room. I'll take my dinner to my room and I'll eat in there. We love to have dinner times together, but when you've been through a whole day and you're overloaded and your brain is already to its max, those are the times when you just got to be, and that's why we have to understand and be open with each other and say, okay, I'm feeling overloaded, I can't do this right now, I can't stand all the noise, the chewing sounds, the different things. So then those are the times when I'll just go to my room and they have their own mechanism. Just this time, this is my story. See, it's Jodi's story. So that's what I have to do to process. Sometimes I just have to drop it all and just go to my room and just decompress for a while and just breathe, and then I can come back and
Not have a meltdown.
not have a meltdown. But that's the key, is to learn those, how to take those breaks.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, and as a child, I always remember being different than the other kids. I didn't really have the large motor skills to play sports. However, I remember inventing projects and imagining great adventures. I never really had any good friends or best friends. And socially, I just never could understand all the rules, so I ended up alienating myself from others. And my dad was a really bad alcoholic, and he struggled with similar issues as I did. I think he was on the spectrum too. Of course, they didn't diagnose people back then. You were odd. He was very verbally abusive to me. My family really didn't understand why I wasn't normal. as a kid, I remember developing coping mechanisms to deal with my autism spectrum disorder. I would create hundreds of lists in my mind, just over and over, to do for every social interaction. For many things I did, I would develop this plan. And that was kind of why I had a propensity toward drama, because my life was a drama. The only way I could function is I came up with these lists. First list was, when you see somebody, say hello, reach hand out, grab hand, squeeze hand, shake hand.
Not too tight.
Look, yeah, not too tight, not too wimpy, look in eyes, but only for a little while or you'll die of pain. You know, and I have lists for talking to people. I have my list of 3 things to say, ask people, so you don't feel socially awkward. You ask them, what do they do for a living? What's your favorite sport? You know, what's the weather like? And same thing, 1, 2, 3. I say, oh, where do you work? Oh, it's nice weather out. You know, I have these, and it was a list. It's the only way I could function. Because when I meet people, a lot of times what would happen is my brain would go into lock mode. Just your brain locks up, stopped. It's like a hard drive that stopped. You can't do anything. You can't talk sometimes. You can't react. Your brain just locks. So always, I knew that in order for me to not get too stressed out where my brain would lock up and I couldn't think, respond, I would come up with these lists. So I have all these immense of coping mechanisms. Over the years, they've become habit. It just goes, and I have the appearance of being neurotypical. People say, well, you don't have any problems. Say it again. Say it again. Say it again. Don't ever say that to someone and presume. And we all understand this. Presume you know what's going on in somebody's life. You know, and it just. So anyway, I developed those. When I was younger, I started doing magic, and magic is repeating and memorizing pattern of speech. Every movement is scripted. Move this way, turn sideways, grab silks. You know, tell the joke. Joke I would tell 1,001 times over. This, when I did the linking rings, I'd say, well, when I was in the Orient, I learned this trick from a man named Fooling You. That's my favorite joke. Boy, is that corny or what? Wow, so this is what's helped me cope. And I did build and fly experimental aircraft. These are some of my attempts of flying in the 70s. This was actually flying with my Benson gyrocopter, because I was, the mad scientist. I was in my garage all the time. Because these things, I understood. These things, I don't understand. So, but again, during my day, there's so much neural processing going on. These lists and routines and functions and everything has to be, you have to think about everything you're doing. Someone's walking up to you, okay, no, don't have a heart attack. Get ready to speak. Think about what you're going to say. Remember, say, how are you? Where do you work? Or what's your favorite thing to do? And just, otherwise my brain would freeze. And what's really difficult is what I call adult bullying. When you get to be an adult, they do it for kids, but for us, we get bullied all the time. But it's much more sophisticated. People sense when you're vulnerable. And Jodi and I are very vulnerable, and we're very careful making decisions and who we work with, because people like to take advantage of us because they sense this childlike simplicity in us. And people love to prey upon that, I'm sorry to say. So we've learned that we realize that we're vulnerable, so we try to get a support system around us of people we can talk to and ask certain things that you might perceive somebody instantly what they're all about. And we may perceive very different, because my perception is so wrong. And I really have a difficulty too with instructions. If I get in instructions, it's really hard to do one instruction, the next. And if someone speaks to me, gives me instructions, it's really difficult for me to hear those. And boy, you're sunk. If someone's trying to explain something to you and you can only get pieces of it. And this is what all your kids experience, this executive functioning, where it's not working right. The two sides aren't communicating correctly. Now those are some of the negative aspects of autism. Now, the way I was diagnosed is our son Caleb went through, back in 20 years ago or 15 years ago, nobody had a clue about what autism was. Everyone understood Rain Man, $3.99, Kmart, underwear at Kmart, $3.99. That's all people understood of autism. So we took him to all kinds of doctors. What is wrong with this kid? You know, he wouldn't listen to us. He wouldn't respond. Could never get his attention. And finally, after, I don't know, 5 years of doctors, Jodi diagnosed the kids. She just looked at a magazine article and said to the psychiatrist, could Caleb have autism? And that dumb doctor with all those degrees, pushing all that medication. Possible.
I said, can I have the same money that you get? I diagnosed the kid. You
So,
want
and we figured
pay
out,
me what you get.
sorry, we figured out when the kids were being diagnosed, wait a minute now, I have more of the diagnostic criteria than they do. And yet we didn't have any supports, and people, you know, didn't understand us. Our family didn't understand us. Our family still doesn't understand us. They don't believe there's anything as such as autism today. Really, and my sister's an educator, special education educator, but she just thinks we're all faking it. So we don't have the family support.
We get the eye roll all the time.
We don't know what that's
you know?
like to have family people that believe in you or support you. So let's see, friendships. I'm going to finish with, I talked about adult bullying, being manipulated a lot, and abuse. And people have you know, they'll do really cruel things. Oh my gosh. Here's my alien friend. Now, this is the one I talk to all the time when I need advice. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know where she found that picture. We talked about friendships. Still today, Jodi and I, you know, we found each other. We're like a match made in heaven. 2 Aspies. You know, we have tremendous neural sensitivities and sensory issues between us. She has more auditory, you know, sounds. I have, you know, feeling, touch, and certain things that go on with my getting overloaded, and I get stressed out. Aspies usually see everything negative. And of course, we've heard this, everybody's face looks angry to us. So we have to look at people and say, I know they're not angry, because they're not throwing things. So that's difficult in personal relationships. Everybody
that's where reading
everyone looks
facial
angry to
expressions
you.
is really hard, because you know most people don't walk around with a big grin on their face. Now, if somebody had a big grin, I can tell they're happy. But most people just kind of walk
And
around
a
with
big
a normal,
grin.
with it, you know, their face.
It's obvious they're happy, and they're just,
Okay, if someone's walking around like this, can you? I mean, you can tell by the glint in their eye, by maybe how they're standing, how they're walking, or you know, a certain way they're holding their head, that they're not mad or they're, you know, sad or that they're angry about something. You know, you can, you know, neurotypical people can generally read, you know, they don't generally look at somebody's face and say, oh, I wonder if they're upset. But our whole thing, our first thing is, are they upset with me?
and then the first thing we think of, we see everything wrong. My perspective, part of what's helped me cope is my perception of everything is usually wrong. It's usually the opposite of what I think. That's how the autistic mind, it sees things differently. The whole world is differently. So they, you know, you perceive threats differently. So we've taught ourselves, no, that's not a threat. No, that's not. But anyway, back to us getting married. Well, now I have a friend, somebody that understands me, and we understand our conditions, even though we didn't know we were diagnosed at that time. When we had the kids re-diagnosed by a neuropsychologist in Oklahoma City, we said, Dr. Chuck, would you diagnose us? And
You did the same assessment?
so he gave us this 6-hour assessment, and of course your stamp, A, you get an A for autism. we were off the charts, you know, autistic, and he helped us a lot, Dr. Chuck, but that was like my epiphany. When I got that diagnosis from the doctor, and he was a neuropsychologist, specialized in brain function, it was really good. He said that you have autism, now I have a reason for how I am. I thought I was just weird, a loser. I had trouble keeping jobs because some jobs would so depress me, I'd almost get suicidal. You have to remember that there's certain jobs, and the way your brain works, assembly line jobs, anything that requires a lot of repetition, I could not do. I worked a couple jobs for 3 days. I was almost suicidal in 3 days of doing these jobs. So I determined the kind of jobs that I can do, and we've done some people skills job, but we've done a lot of speaking. Jodi and I have pastored a church before, and we've been missionaries in America, and we've done work with the poor and a lot of work in the community, and we see crowds. Now get this, you guys aren't people. You're a crowd. You're a crowd. You're not a person. Now, to talk to you individually, it's harder. To talk to a crowd, we feel comfortable in front of a crowd because you're not threatening. So,
We also like to monologue, so it's the perfect monologue. I get to talk, you get to listen. Now, we do a lot of prison work, so we go into the prison and we do
Talk.
We get to talk, but we do a class and the guys talk to us back and they ask questions and we're not afraid to answer questions. For some reason that's not the same. Now, if you put me in a small group where it's like 3 people and I have to interact like that, then I forget, okay, which is my turn? Is my turn done yet? Is it your turn? No, now what, So,
well, and then one thing I mean, talk about our struggles, and we'll talk about more of our victories. The vestibular system is your balance. A lot of our kids say, ooh, it's hard to balance. You can always tell an Aspie by how he walks. He's got the link. He's got I can see it. I can tell in 5 seconds someone has autism by the way they walk, because their whole neurological system is reacting a certain way. You can see kind of that little bit of a odd gait. I mean, it's not scientific, but like everybody, you can see it a mile away, and it takes one to know one.
well, have you ever seen someone with autism run? It's kind of like, that's how I run. I mean, it's like, I watch.
We should open up a practice. Okay, now run. Okay, autism.
Now, there is one
$500,
that a lot of people
please.
complain about.
10-minute evaluation.
But my guess is that he actually can diagnose because he looks at it from the perspective of someone who has autism. I'm not going to say who it is, but I think some people might know who I'm talking about. But some people get mad. Well, they just spent 5 minutes and he diagnosed him. Some people say they spent 20 minutes and didn't do anything, and so.
Oh yeah, that's Jordan. Excuse me.
But I mean, he killed me. He came walking in. He had his pants
We did not
hiked up.
say that.
Had his pants hiked up like Urkel, and I looked at him. I said, "Blair, he's got autism." He just doesn't know it. He hasn't admitted
Oh,
it.
and we're probably in trouble. This is our part, but it's like the guy has a heart. You may not like his quirky personality, but he's the only developmental pediatrician. One of the few. There's one at Children's Hospital that take the poorest kind of access insurance. He'll see these kids that nobody else will see, and that's what we appreciated about this doctor who shall be nameless. Anyway, we like Aspie, so. But then my proprioceptive system, this is where it really is